The year is 1992. Comic books are booming. And you know you're going to want to sell all your Apple stock, cash in your 401k, and buy multiple copies of these comic books because decades from now, you're going to be set for life. Hundreds of thousands of millions of copies printed. Comics are going nowhere from up but here. But wait. But it's the comic boom of 1992. Let's look at the books with the most copies submitted to CGC up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe. Check out the description of this video for links to my eBay store, email, Instagram, and whatnot. So it's 1992. We have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of big books. I mean, we're in the midst of the early 90s comic boom. Just excuse me, I'm under reorganization of my basement right here. So everything's okay. It should be better by next week, hopefully. But we're going to go through the top 10 books from 1992. We use CGCdata.com, which hasn't been updated since September 16th. It's been 2 months. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I know that CGC itself changed from a census count to the population report, changed the format. So I don't know if CGC data brings the data in just the same way. I haven't updated the numbers manually. So I'm just going by because for what we're talking about, it's just kind of a fun list to look at the books that have been most submitted. There is a little bit of competition. I actually should check numbers 1 and 2 just to make sure that they are still the same, in the same order at least. But let me do a quick check of those two. What we do here every month is we take CGC blue labels only. We don't include, restored or qualified, or especially in this case, signature series, which is going to have a bearing, obviously. No, it hasn't changed. Okay, so let's take a look. We look at Universal Blue Labels, and we count down the top 10. We look at the top 10 for both DC and Marvel. And what that's going to include at this point in time is any books that are in the top books from each independent, and in some cases, up to the top 10 until we get to the 10th, in this case, DC book. So let's start the list. We're going to count down starting from number 10 to number 1, and then we'll go through all the other books, big keys, books of import, and other valuable books, etc. So we start our count at number 10, and the number 10 book on the list is X-Force number 11. This is the first true appearance of Domino. She had appeared earlier, but that was Copycat imitating Domino. Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nasienza's story. Liefeld and Trevor Scott did the art. Actually, Mark Pacell and Dan Panosian did the interior art, not Liefeld. So Domino, of course, was in the second Deadpool film. Did not reprise her role in Deadpool and Wolverine. But again, this is an abundant book. There are a lot of them out there. So really, a lot of cases, once we get past the top handful of books on the list, for especially DC and Marvel and really Image and Valiant, unless there's something special about it, that causes some rarity, you're not going to see a lot of these books really holding a whole ton of value. This has 4,955 copies on the population report. Number 9 on the list from Valiant is Rye number 0. Bob Layton story. Jim Shooter did the story. I think they maxed that up on the label here. It says Bob Layton story and Jim Shooter cover. I think it's the other way around, right? At any rate, this is the first full appearance of Bloodshot. It's not really a Rye key. It's a Bloodshot key, and the origin and first appearance of the new Rye. So this is the Valiant universe that Shooter developed once he left Marvel, and we're seeing a lot of the Valiant superheroes. Now, the joke is that, you come across the collection, it's all Valiant. There were a lot of these books printed. And I actually was going to Wikipedia for these, and I guess whoever, has recently edited the story talks about the number of, copies and how these were great sellers early on. And that's true. It was popular. People, again, were trying to get in on this new universe. 30 years earlier, Marvel came along and Fantastic Four 1, Amazing Fantasy 15, et cetera, et cetera. These books are worth a ton of money. But by 1992, people were hoarding them and saving them and putting them in bags and boards. So they're still out there. You're going to find them. This the series ran through issue number 33. And in terms of the Blue Label count on the population report, there are 5,053. Let's go to number 8 on the list. And this is our top DC book. This is Superman, the Man of Steel, number 18. And this is the first full appearance of Doomsday, leading, of course, to the Death of Superman storyline. There are multiple printings of this book for both direct and newsstand. Some of them are pricier than others. And you don't get designations for newsstand on the population report, at least, or the old census count. But you do get designations for the different printings. Louise Simonson, the story, John Bogdanov, and Dennis Janke did the cover and the art of this. So this was a whole sequence of stories leading up to Doomsday and then leading up to the battle and then the aftermath that spanned late 92 and early 93. So this is December 1992. This is the top DC book, and it comes in with 5,142 copies. Let's go to the number 7 book on the list, and this is Amazing Spider-Man 363. This is a classic cover by Mark Bagley. Dave Michelini did the story. This is the third appearance of Carnage, really, and this tri-headed cover is popular among collectors. This was one of the books that was a darling of the comic boom because the Venom Let There Be Carnage movie coincided with the comic boom, right? That movie came out, what was it, in late 2021? Or was it early 2022? But people were speculating, and we'll see more of that as we go along. 7,905 copies. The 6th book on the list is Amazing Spider-Man number 365. This is the 30th anniversary of Spider-Man, and it includes a preview appearance of Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara. It has this cardstock cover that can be more difficult to get in higher grade because you can't really do anything with it in terms of pressing it. If there's a spine tick in there, it's it's very difficult to get out. And you also have a hologram paste on the cover that can get scratched fairly easily. But this has 9,378 copies. The number 5 book on the list is Amazing Spider-Man 362, second appearance of Carnage, Carnage Part 2. Michelini and Bagley. This comes in with 9,799 copies. The 4th book on the list is Spider-Man 2099, number 1, by Peter David, Rick Leonardi, and Al Williamson. This is the first full appearance of Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, a series that ran 46 issues and was the beginning of the 2099 universe that Marvel put out at this time. Another thing, let's get on the ground floor of this one. This was languished for years in terms of its value, and then Miguel O'Hara appeared at the very end of the first Spider-Verse film and was a major character in the second one, so that really has boosted the recognition of this particular book and also Amazing Spider-Man 365. This is a foil cover. It's red foil on the outside. So again, cardstock foil. When it takes damage, it keeps damage. But there are plenty of these out there. There are a total of 10,877 Blue Label copies in the population report. Number 3 on the list. This was another comic boom darling. This is X-Men issue number 4. Jim Lee and John Byrne did the story. Lee and Scott Williams did the cover and the art. So this is the first appearance of Omega Red. We see him partially on the cover here with his hand. There was an enormous amount of speculation about Omega Red appearing in WandaVision or Falcon and Winter Soldier. And for some reason, that just snowballed in terms of speculation during the comic boom, even though it made no sense. The first mutant they're going to introduce is Omega Red. He was a popular character this time coming out of these Jim Lee X-Men books. And also was a popular character, a antagonist of the X-Men in the animated series. So but there are a lot of copies of this. And what happened too is these books, right? The books that we're talking about that are around the top 10, these Carnage and Miguel O'Hara related books, and this is another one of them, was that people submitted a lot of them. And you have to remember that during the comic boom, people were submitting these in grades other than 9.8, right? And there were, 9.0s, 9.2s, 8.5s that have not remotely held their value. This is a book that you really need graded in a 9.8 because there's such an overabundance. There's an overabundance of 9.8s out there because everybody was submitting everything of this every time they saw a copy. But there's so many books lower than 9.8. And collectors, there are enough 9.8s out there that collectors can be somewhat discriminating in terms of making sure they get a 9.8. There are a total of 12,973 Blue Label copies on the population report. Number 2 on the list is from Image Comics, Spawn #1 by Todd McFarlane. So, Image Comics. In late 1991, there were a group of creators from Marvel that got together. Eric Larson was one of the first ones, and then along with Rob Liefeld. Now, Larson had been working on Spider-Man, Liefeld on X-Force, McFarlane had been working on Spider-Man, and Larson had taken over the Amazing book. Mark Silvestri, who was working on Wolverine, and Whilce Portacio, who was working on Uncanny X-Men. Jim Lee, who was working on X-Men, and Jim Valentino was working on Guardians of the Galaxy. Those 7 creators eventually got together and started Image Comics, which was creator-owned properties. So Todd McFarlane owns the rights to Spawn. The big distinction here is when you work for Marvel DC, it's work for hire. So whatever you put into the book, when you create a new character, the character belongs to the parent company, right? Marvel, DC, Disney, Warner Brothers, whatever. So Todd McFarlane creates Venom. Venom is owned by Disney, Marvel Comics. So once they had established their reputations and their followings among fandom, they went over here and created their own characters. So McFarlane owns Spawn. Everything Spawn related is negotiated by Todd McFarlane. He owns the rights. And so the first book came out in April of 1992. This came out the next month in May of 1992 from Image. And Spawn is still going strong. I think the most recent issue is issue 374. It's still around. And so what happened too is they left a vacuum at Marvel, right? They took most of their top creators off their top books, plus Jim Valentino. Best work was Normal Man. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I enjoyed the Guardians of the Galaxy series. But they took their top creators off the top books, and this, I think, so now you had not only the Marvel books, but people were now buying the Image books. And there was only so many books that people could buy. Your collector, your person that's going to keep those books in their collection long term. We'll see what happens in a couple of years with that. Stay tuned for the episodes over the next several weeks. I think it should be a bumpy road. It's got to be like fun to look back on in retrospect. Now, this particular book, there was a pinup by George Perez in this book. It's first appearance of Spawn, and there were 1.7 million copies of this book printed. They are out there. They're plentiful. So we're talking about McFarlane owning the property. There was a 1997 film with Michael Jai White as Spawn, which didn't do that great. 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it made money for the studio. There was an HBO animated series that ran from 97 to 99. There was a 99 video game. There's been talk for years of another movie, but McFarlane's the one that makes that decision of is the script, we're going to go ahead with it. He has the say because he owns it. So I don't know what deal he has with it, whatever studio might be developing it, but people are waiting for another Spawn movie. The first movie wasn't really as satisfying, I think, to a lot of fans. But at any rate, the Spawn issue #1, and there are a lot of signature series out there as well. Let me get that number real quick, because McFarlane does a lot of signings. Actually, I should look here. There are 7,265 signature series as well. In addition, the Blue Label copies, 28,612. Actually, the most recent number is 28,901. That keeps it in position number 2, because position number 1, and we've been working around this book earlier on the list, it is Amazing Spider-Man 361, the first full appearance of Carnage. There are about 4,000 signature series on this one, but this is again, this was a book like, Woody Harrelson portraying Carnage in the second Venom film. That got collectors excited. I remember I bought a collection the day that the Carnage 2 trailer came out, and it had a copy of 361. It had a copy of the second print. I was like, this is great. I submitted them to CGC, waited about 7 years for them to come back, and they weren't 9/8. I think the second print was an 8.5. I was new at the cleaning. I didn't even clean and press them myself. I think I had CCS do it. It was a mess. But live and learn. Still a popular book, but this book went ballistic during the comic boom. And again, we talk about copies being graded other than 9/8. There are only about less than a third of the books of this are 9/8. There are a lot of 9/6s. More than half the books are 9.6 or better, but there are plenty of books down under 9, like about 10% of the books are under a 9.0 that are on the census for this, just by comparison. And what does a 9.0 go for? Maybe $50-$60 at this point. And so there, again, plenty of them out there. This was a double boom darling, right? It was released during the comic boom of the 90s, and it gained popularity in terms of getting it graded during the comic boom of the early 2020s. So there are the Blue Label on the population report, 29,021. So let's venture outside the top 10 and look at some other fun books. So we're going to go through other publishers. So we have 4 publishers in the top 10. So there were 7 Marvel in the top 10. Let's go down further on the list. We'll go to number 11 on the list, and this is the 8th Marvel book. It is Iron Man 282, the first full appearance of War Machine. Editor's note. So a little note about this. This is Tony Stark in the War Machine armor. There are a lot of different War Machine keys. When we think of War Machine in terms of popular culture, we think of James Rhodes, Rhodey, portrayed by Don Cheadle in the MCU. Now, he first appeared in Iron Man 118. He was in the Iron Man armor. That's another small key. This is Tony Stark as War Machine. Rhodey, 2 issues later, he put the armor on, but was calling himself Iron Man when he joined the West Coast Avengers. And finally, it was in West Coast Avengers number 94 that he finally calls himself War Machine. So this book is on the population report with 3,865 copies. Coming in at number 12 on the list is X-Men number 5. This is the first full cover appearance and second appearance of Omega Red. And also it is the first appearance of Maverick. This again, a boom darling, because, okay, if you can't get the first appearance, get the second appearance. I mean, when the first appearance of this was going crazy, the second appearance was more affordable, but still, they're both fairly affordable. Jim Lee did the cover and the story, and John Byrne also contributed to the story. This has 3,508 copies. The 10th Marvel book on the list is Ghost Rider Volume 2. Should be Volume 3, right? The Western one from the 60s. Volume 2, number 28. This is the first cameo appearance of the Midnight Suns. And long speculation about this. We haven't seen hide nor hair of Ghost Rider in the MCU. We will see there's a video game in development. We'll see if anything comes of this in terms of the MCU. The Kubert brothers did the cover and art, and Howard Mackey did the story. This, again, was a book that got popular during the comic boom. There are 3,437 copies. Next book. It's the second book from Image. It is Spawn, issue number 2. Plentiful book out there. People do collect their Spawn, but there are a lot of these out there. Maybe they like to get them in 9/8. 3,328. The next book on the list is our second Valiant book, and it is Harbinger number 1. This is the first appearance of Harbinger, the team of powered teens. Jim Shooter did the story. Dave Lapham and Bob Layton did the cover. There is a later issue, I forget the exact issue, that looks a lot like this cover where they're in the car and what have you, but it's not this one. And also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a Valiant expert by any means. There was a coupon you could send in for the special one. That was it out of this? It was clipped. At any rate, Harbinger ran for 41 issues, which is about average for a Valiant book of this era. That's kind of how long we rode that out. There are 2,911 copies on the census. The next book, also from Valiant, is Eternal Warrior number 3. This is the first appearance of Bloodshot in Cameo before his appearance in Rise Zero. Kevin Van Hook did the story. Dennis Cowan did the art. There are the cover art, I should say. There are 2,593 copies. The next book, and I added another Marvel book because this is a somewhat key first appearance, a fun first appearance. Marvel Superheroes, Volume 2, Issue number 8. This is the first appearance of Squirrel Girl. You have this great Art Adams cover, and Squirrel Girl does appear in this, also called the Winter Special on the cover, but that is the title. Even though you don't see the number on the cover, right? It is Marvel Superheroes. So it was a quarterly. They would be like summer specials, spring, winter, whatever. First appearance of Squirrel Girl. This is a square-bound 80-page book. And Squirrel Girl has become quite a popular character among Marvel fandom. There are 2,372 copies. The next book, it's our fourth Valiant book. This is Exo Man of War, issue number 1. This particular series ran for, 68 issues. This is the origin and first appearance of Exo Man of War, Eric Dacia, and the first appearance of other people. Jim Shooter and Steve Englehart did the story. Barry Windsor-Smith, Bob Layton, and John Holvers did the art, and Bob Layton did the cover. Exo Man of War was popular during this time. There actually was a Marvel crossover in a video game, Iron Man and Exo Man of War in Heavy Metal, which came out in 96. And to show you exactly how old that video game is, it had a version for MS-DOS. There are 1,894 copies on the census. We go to our third Image book, and we're kind of staying in order here. It's Spawn issue number 3, McFarlane story, cover, and art. There are 1,797 copies. The next book is another Image book. This is Wildcats number 1, the Wild Covert Action Teams. This is by Jim Lee. Now, this came out in August of 1992, so 3 months after Spawn. Brandon Choi did the story. Lee and Scott Williams did the art. First appearance of Wildcats. Now, the Jim Lee had the property. Eventually, again, we talked about Image being creator-owned. He sold this to Disney. He sold it to DC in 1988, and it was printed under the Wildstorm imprint. Eventually came into the DC universe. There was a CBS animated TV series in 1994 that was one season of 13 episodes. In 1995, there was a Super NES game for Wildcats. So, jumping on the popularity, I'm sure Jim Lee did very well off of that. There are 1,737 copies. The next book on the list is another Marvel book, and it's X-Men Adventures number 1 by Ralph Macchio. Not the Karate Kid, different Ralph Macchio. Andrew Wildman, Robert Campanella did the art, and Steve Lightly did the cover. So this is based on the X-Men animated series. The X-Men Adventures X-Men the animated series. For some reason, it caught on that, like, when you adapted an animated series around this time, that you called it Adventures. It was for 5 seasons and 71 episodes on Fox, was exceedingly popular. Of course, spawning the X-Men 97 reboot series on Disney+. This is the first appearance of Morph, and it was more aimed for kids, so it's a little bit harder to find in grade, and that's why I guess it's down further on this list. Still not a difficult book to find. There were 1,667 copies of this, and the book ran for 15 issues. The next book is our fifth Image book. It is Spawn number 4. McFarlane, story cover and art. There's a Dave Sim pinup in this book. Sim would come back and do a Cerebus crossover with Spawn later on. That's one of the things that we've seen with these independent books. They have the freedom, if the creators agree, let's throw Turtles into Flaming Carrot, or Cerebus into this, or whoever into that. Pretty free and easy. This has 1,567 copies. Our second DC book is Batman, Sword of Azrael, issue number 1 by Denny O'Neil. Joe Quesada and Kevin Nolan did the cover and art. This is the first appearance of Azrael, John Paul Valley, who eventually, for a while, takes over the mantle of Batman after Batman's, little backbreaking issue with Bane. So this is one of the more popular DC issues of the time. This is a 4-issue miniseries, and this has 1,434 copies. Back to Image. And it's Youngblood issue number 2. This is the first appearance of Shadowhawk and Prophet. Now, Prophet, there was talk of a Prophet movie or TV series, which Jake Gyllenhaal was attached to. I haven't heard anything about that in years. Rob Liefeld and Jim Valentino did the story cover and art. This is a flip book, so you get the back cover has Shadowhawk on it. This has 1,367 copies. Going to Valiant now. The next book is the 5th book from Valiant. It's Solar Man of the Atom, issue number 10. This is a black embossed cover. So like what you're probably seeing in this slab and the image you see on the screen, and even you can barely make out the embossed trade dress. Jim Shooter did the story. There is no credit for the art because it's just a black cover. It just looks like a big black mass. This had Barry Windsor Smith did the art, and there's a 16-page insert. This has 1,361 copies. Staying with Valiant, it's Shadow Man, issue number 1. Origin, the first full appearance of Shadow Man, Jack Boniface. Jim Shooter, Steve Englehart did the story. Dave Lapham and Joe Rubenstein did the art. This title ran for 43 issues with Valiant. And also, there were 2 video games, one in 1999 and one in 2002. Now, there was a reboot of a lot of Valiant properties in 2012, and there's just been another reboot of the Valiant properties. This book clocks in with a population report count of 1,144. The 7th Valiant book on the list. This is Valiant Heavy. This is Harbinger number 0, the pink cover variant. Dave Lapham did the story, the cover, and the art. There are 2 variants. There's one where the clouds are not pink and one where they are pink. This, I guess, is the rarer one. This was the one that you had to mail away to get. So you had to mutilate several comics in order to get this through a mail away. And it's always questionable in these mail-aways how well they're protected to get to your home. There are 1,104 copies in the census. Let's go to another publisher, sort of. From Malibu. It's Malibu Sun number 13. This has a cover image of Spawn by Todd McFarlane, which makes it very popular. Now, Image Comics actually initially was under Malibu. Malibu was the parent company and Image was the imprint. It was in a couple of years later that Image would break off on their own, which really didn't do Malibu any favors. So Malibu, there was a Malibu Sun in last week's episode from 1991 of an Evil Ernie preview. So we have the Spawn preview here. That's what makes this one very popular. There are 1,074 copies on the population report. Staying with Image, we have Youngblood number 1. This is another flip book. This ran for 10 issues, but there were a lot of reboots of different miniseries and offshoots of it. This is the Rob Liefeld book that came out of Image. This was April of 1992, so it's the first Image book. We had talked about the Ash Can edition that may have been printed earlier, but I don't think it was distributed until 1992. It had a print date of 1991. So yeah, this is the first Image logo, and again, we got kind of a flip book cover. I wonder how many folks have requested that the flip book be the main image when they get it slabbed by CGC. Now, if I was a Youngblood collector, which I am not, I'd probably want one of each, right? But Let me know if I could have, I guess, combed through some images, but whatever. There are the 1,057 Blue Label copies. Next on the list is Savage Dragon Limited Series number 1 by Eric Larson. This is the first appearance of Savage Dragon. There were other there were other characters, the dragon and so forth, that had been seeing print since Larson was a teenager. But he kind of took that idea, which he owned because it was all an independent and underground stuff, and brought it to Image following the popularity he gained by succeeding Todd McFarlane on Amazing Spider-Man. This was a limited series. There was a regular series that's still running and still drawn by Larson to this day. This particular book has 1,029 copies on the census, or the population report, I should say. And then the 9th Image book is Spawn number 5. This is the death of Billy Kincaid, which became a little bit of a key earlier this year when they brought that character back. This has 994 copies. And then the 10th, and this is the last Image book that we're going to talk about because it's the top 10 for Image, but we still have like a lot of DC. We've only had 2 DC books so far. This is Spawn number 6, first appearance of Overkill. There are 984 copies. Let's go to DC. Their 3rd book on the list. This is Batman Adventures number 1. Kelly Puckett did the story. Ty Templeton and Rick Burkett did the art. Templeton did the cover. This is based on the animated series. This particular title ran for 36 issues, and there were other titles that succeeded it. Batman and Robin Adventures, Batman and Gotham Adventures, all based on the Batman animated series, which began in 1992 and ran through 1995 with new episodes. There were a total of 85 episodes in the original run, and it gave birth to the whole universe that had, Superman animated series and Justice League Unlimited and so on and so forth. There are a total of 978 copies. Next book on the list is another DC book. It is Superman, the Man of Steel number 17. This has a preview appearance of Doomsday. There are 874 copies. Going back to Valiant, their 8th book is Rye number 1. Lapham and Bob Layton did the cover. There are 800 copies on the population report. From DC, their 5th book is Batman Shadow of the Bat, issue number 1. First appearance of Victor Zsasz, who is a serial killer that keeps his body count etching that into his own body. Alan Grant did the story. Norm Brayfogle did the art, and Brian Stelfreeze did the cover. Now, this came in polybagged, so sometimes you'll still find these polybagged. Zsasz was used quite a bit in live action. Anthony Corrigan, who portrayed Metamorpho in the Superman movie, portrayed him in the Gotham TV series. He was also in Batman Begins and Batwoman and Birds of Prey, the Harley Quinn movie that came out right before the pandemic. There are a total of 784 copies. The 9th Valiant book is Magnus Robot Fighter, issue number 12. This is the first Valiant appearance of Turok. An insert story. You see Turok there on the cover. Gonzalo Mayo did the cover. There are 723 copies. Going back to DC, it's Action Comics 684. This is this is Doomsday Arrives in Metropolis, is the key significance on this one. There are 672 copies. The 10th Valiant book on the list is Exo Man of War number 4. First appearance of Jack Boniface, Shadow Man, and a 1-panel cameo. Harbinger appearance, really getting this. I picked up a couple of Valiant books, but I'm not really a Valiant expert by any means. Steve Englehart and Bob Layton did the story. Barry Windsor-Smith and Layton did the cover. This clocks in with 655 copies on the population report. Let's just write out the top 10 from DC. The 7th DC book is Superman 74. This is a Doomsday appearance. We know what it's leading up to, don't we? Dan Jurgens did the story. Jurgens and Brett Breeding cover and art. There are 638 copies. Adventures of Superman 497. Same deal. Another December 1992 book, Jerry Ordway did the story. Tom Grummett and Doug Hazelwood did the cover and art. This ongoing doomsday battle, which we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger at the end of 1992 here. It's going to be concluded in 1993. There are 567 copies. The 9th DC book is Batman number 475. This is the first appearance of Renee Montoya, who was a detective with the Gotham City Police Department, eventually became the Second Question. And this is another character that appears in Gotham. She appeared in the Arrowverse Batwoman TV series and appeared, Rosie Perez portrayed her in the Birds of Prey movie that starred Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, which is the last new movie I saw before the pandemic. This has 507 copies. And the 10th DC book on the list, well, wait, before we get to that, the next book clocking in is Spawn number 1, Qualified. Now, this is a little bit weird, right? Because it was manufactured with uneven black ink on the cover. So it looks like a lot of times, and there are variations in this, you don't see the issue number, you don't see the price, and it just looks really weird. Sometimes, and in this case they do it, CGC gives it a green label as an error. It's a production error. Sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. Swagglehouse did a whole video on a book that he got recently that had this kind of thing that also has blue label and green label. But, first appearance of Spawn. There are 461 qualified copies of this on the population report. The 10th DC book on the list is Detective Comics 647. This is the first appearance of Stephanie Brown. She is the daughter of the villain Cluemaster. She becomes Spoiler, who is a partner / somewhat romantic interest of Tim Drake at the time. She does become Batgirl for a while, right before the New 52. Chuck Dixon did the story, Tom Lyle and Scott Hanna the art, and Matt Wagner did the cover. There are 419 copies. So now let's go through all of these other publishers and their top books. So buckle up. This is going to be a little bit different. From Malibu Eternity is Evil Ernie number 2. This is the first cover appearance of Lady Death. Brian Pulido did the story. Eric Maché did the cover. So Lady Death, a very popular character. There are certain type of collectors that like, these good girl art characters. That's what Lady Death is. She has had her multiple series of her own over the years. Her first appearance was in Evil Ernie number 1, which came out the previous year in 91. This is her first cover appearance. There are 404 copies. The top book from Top Cow, which was related to Image. This is the Mark Silvestri book that he did the art for, and his brother Eric did the story. This is Cyberforce Limited Series number 1. It's the first Top Cow title. And there are, this was a limited series. There are 399 copies. From Dark Horse, their top book is Army of Darkness number 1. This is Sam and Ivan Raimi did the story. John Bolton did the story cover and art. Basically, John Bolton adapted the Army of Darkness movie, which was the third part of a trilogy after Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. The end of Evil Dead 2, the Bruce Campbell's character was transported through time back to the Middle Ages, but he had a shotgun and a chainsaw, and there's zombies or something. I watched it at one point. I enjoyed the movie. I'm not a huge fan. I know there are folks that are. Bruce Campbell. The one thing that's interesting about this is this came out before the release of the movie. The movie came out in 1992. The book predated that. So, spoiler, there are 362 copies on the census. From Mirage, their top book is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 47. There is a Space Usagi backup story by Stan Sakai in this. So Sakai was also doing his Usagi Yojimbo work under Mirage at this point in time. There are 349 copies, which ties it with the top book from Harris, which is Vampirella issue number 1, which has an Adam Hughes cover. There's also a coupon for free Dave Stevens poster. Vampirella, of course, had been published by Warren in magazine format all those years. This is a comic book by Kurt Busiek, covered by Adam Hughes. So you got Vampirella and Adam Hughes. That's going to make this book pretty popular, 349 copies. Next book on the list. This is an interesting one. This is from Adventure Comics. This is Rust number 1, by Steve Miller, not that one. Philip Hester and Andre Parks did the art, and Dave Dorman did the cover. They give it an embossed bronze foil logo, which is a staple of the 90s. We're going to see a lot more of that coming up in future years, aren't we, folks? This is the top book from Adventure Comics, 232 copies. The top book from Viz Comics is Alita Battle Angel #1. This adapts the manga story by Yukito Kishiro. First American appearance of Alita. Led to a bunch of different comics. This was a 9-issue series, but there were many series that followed this. There was a movie that came out in 2019, which was, by this time, the property is a Dynamite property. Rosa Salazar played the lead character. James Cameron co-wrote the script with Robert Rodriguez, who directed the movie. So that has increased the visibility of this book. 203 copies on the population report. The top book from Midway is Mortal Kombat, the comic book, no number. John Tobias did the story. Tobias and Andy Kutelka did the cover and art. So this does look like some of the, to me, the artwork's a little clunky. And we see this with some of these comic books from the 90s that are derivations of other properties. Of course, Mortal Kombat, a hugely popular video game. This is a one-shot comic. The video game came out in 1992 as well. There are 176 copies on the census. The top book from CFD Publications is Cry for Dawn #1. Joseph Michael Lisner, story, cover, and art. This is the last issue of the series, and that is not mine. It says this image offends women. Their words, not mine. 137 copies on the census. Top book from Cartoon Books is Bone #4 by Jeff Smith. Interesting. Letters by Stan Sakai and Chuck Dixon, who were established comic book professionals at this time. We talked about the popularity of Bone, still publishing by himself with, and self-publishing with Cartoon Books. 130 copies on the census. The top book from Wizard Publications is Wizard Magazine #11, Todd McFarlane's Spawn cover. And there's also a Spawn poster. Wizard, it's interesting. Wizard was headquartered about 2 towns over from where I grew up, or the town next to where I lived before I got married, in Congers, New York. I'm not doxing them because they don't exist anymore. And actually, one of my brother's close friends that he grew up with, who lived behind us, worked for Wizard. And so this Todd McFarlane, that's going to make it popular. 107 copies on the pop report. The top book from... Oh, wait. What the... Yeah, okay. Another book. This is Malibu Sun #13, the Error Edition. Now, this is an error that gets a blue label. Right? It's the Spawn preview, but the back cover is printed without, red or something, and Spawn looks all green and blue and stuff. So, an Error Edition. It's harder to find. Collectors seek it out. Spawn collectors love it. 104 copies in the census. The top book from Topps Comics is Bram Stoker's Dracula #1. So this is an adaptation of the film by Francis Ford Coppola, which starred Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, and Gary Oldman. The 4-issue miniseries by Roy Thomas, who basically just adapted the script. Mike Mignola, and John Nyberg. This was the first Topps comic book. Now, Topps, Jim Salicrup had left Marvel and started Topps. A lot of intellectual properties that they did. This is their first ever comic. They had things like X-Files, a lot of others. Now, Mignola also did a set of cards related to the movie. Now, Topps began all the way back in 1938, and they started as a bubblegum company. Topps was the company that produced Bazooka bubblegum with the little Bazooka Joe cartoons, comic strips that the bubblegum was wrapped in. Starting in 1951, they got into the card business with a very small set of baseball cards in 1951. They kind of jumped in fully in 1952 and overtook Bowman as the leader in baseball cards and have been a leader in that field ever since. They dipped their toes into comic books during this boom time from 1992 to 1998, and this is their top book with 98 copies on the census. The top book from Eclipse is Miracle Man number 23 by Neil Gaiman, Mark Buckingham, and a Barry Windsor Smith cover. I think this is the penultimate issue of Miracle Man, and it is taking a while to get this done. This book was coming out, and I think it was like biannually at this point. There are 97 copies on the population report. Coming in at the next position is the top book from Walt Disney, which is Disney's The Little Mermaid Limited Series issue number 1. Peter David does story. Chuck Austin, Lee Hernandez, Dave Hunt, art, Dave Pacheco, and Brian Garvey did the cover. So this is based on the 1989 animated film. The Disney did a series of these with their next generation of movies that really repopularized their animated movie division. Little Mermaid was the first one out of the box. There's also a Beauty and the Beast limited series this particular year, and this clocked in with 96 copies in the population report. From Innovation, their best book is Forbidden Planet number 1. Dave Campiti did the story. Derek Gross did the cover and art. This is the official adaptation of the classic motion picture. The motion picture came out in 1956. It's an early sci-fi classic in which it was directed by Fred M. Wilcox, starred Walter Pidgeon, Anne Francis, and Leslie Nielsen. And it does have kind of a comic book connection in that the narration in the movie was by Les Tremayne, who some 20 years later would play Mentor on the Shazam TV series. This gained some popularity just recently. And again, Innovation did a lot of these intellectual properties, movies, TVs, Lost in Space and Quantum Leap, that sort of thing. There's been news that they're going to do another movie or a TV series based on this property. Of course, you have Robbie the Robot on the cover. This had 82 copies submitted. From the Epic imprint of Marvel is Akira number 32, based on the popular manga. We talked about this several episodes ago when number 1 came out. Top book from Archie Publications is Sonic the Hedgehog number 1/4. It's a 4-page newsprint promotional. And it predates the ongoing Sonic series, which we'll talk more about probably next week. Scott Shaw did the cover and art. Did Scott Shaw also... Was Scott Shaw, if I'm not mistaken, was the creator of Captain Carrot. Is that correct? I'm not mistaken there, am I? Captain Carrot is Amazing Zoo Crew. He also did some Simpsons, but we haven't gotten to Bongo years yet. Anyway, Sonic 1/4 has 73 copies on the census. The top book from Tundra is The Crow number 3. This is volume 3, Death, or issue number 3, really. James O'Barr did everything. This was just another Crow miniseries. This jumping in with 68 copies on the census. The top book from London Knight is Razor number 1. Everett Hartsoe story and art. Thomas O'Connor and Tim Tyler did the cover. This series ran for 12 issues, and there are 56 copies in the population report. From Mulehide Graphics is I, Lucifer number 2. Number 1 was on the list last year. This by Drew Hayes. It is a magazine size, and it has 50 copies. Staying with magazines, Nintendo of America is Nintendo Power number 33, with here a Turtles cover. That's going to get folks interested. 44 copies on the census. From Revolutionary Comics is Sports Superstars Comics number 1, featuring Michael Jordan. Very popular genre around this time. Were these sports personality comics. They kind of are akin to, I remember the books that I checked out of the library as a kid, where it would be a kid's book about a famous athlete. I remember actually just recently referencing with a friend of mine, I remembered the fact that Rod Carew was born on a train. Because he was saying Rod Carew was born in New York City, but actually was born on a train in Panama. Went to high school in New York City. But this Michael Jordan, Rod Carew is a Hall of Fame baseball player for the Minnesota Twins and California Angels. For those of you who aren't really into the sports ball things. At any rate, the Michael Jordan stuff, they're two athletes that are really going to move these kinds of things in terms of collectability. Michael Jordan being one of them. We'll talk about somebody else in just a little while. This has 40 graded copies. Top book from Antarctic Press is Gold Digger #1. Fred Perry, cover story and art. They ran it for 4 issues and then a subsequent 50-issue series following that. 39 copies. From Harvey Publications, their top book is Scooby-Doo #1. And it reprints Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? #2, the Dell book. Now, Scooby-Doo had already been with Dell/Gold Key, then with Charlton, then with Marvel, now with Harvey. I think there was one other pit stop before they finally went to DC, and it'll probably stay there since Warner Brothers owns both properties. There's a reprint book, and guess why? It's Harvey Classics. 39 copies in the census. The top book from Comic Zone is Psycho Killers #8, the John Wayne Gacy story. This is somewhat problematic, and I'll refer to this again with another book that we have on the list from the same year. I guess it became something that was kind of popular around this time. I don't know what was in Psycho Killers 1 through 7, and I would feel less disturbed by it if it was fictional Psycho Killers, but this was a real life Psycho Killer, and the dude dressed as a clown. 30 copies in the census. The top book from Now Comics is Married with Children Special #1 with this Christina Applegate photo cover. That probably enhances its popularity. There are 28 copies. The top book from this is Eternity is Robotech 2, The Sentinels, Book 2, #3. 26 copies. Our top book from Magnum is Baseball's Greatest Heroes #4 with a Mickey Mantle photo cover. We talked about the popularity of Michael Jordan. There was a Mickey Mantle book that was on the list. I think it was last year. Mickey Mantle, probably the most collectible vintage baseball card, and is they're the most sought after, and that carries over here to the comics. Joe Sinnott and Joe Orska did the art. There are 26 copies of this on the census. In relation to the John Wayne Gacy, the next book is the top book from Boneyard Press, and this is Jeffrey Dahmer, The Unauthorized Biography, issue #1. Hart D. Fisher did the story, Al Hanford the art, and Eric Neff did the cover. So this came up again. This was actually referenced if you watched the Dahmer miniseries that starred Evan Peters as Jeffrey Dahmer, which I did, which is quite disturbing. Again, since it's based on actual fact. So Hart D. Fisher, when he was at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, he developed this story. And there was a lot of controversy around this because he kind of capitalized on the deaths of the victims, right? Telling the Jeffrey Dahmer story and sensationalizing it. And I think what made it even worse was subsequently there were other books, comics that he did. And as opposed to a more serious sort of academic approach to it, this was more sensationalistic. And for instance, the tone of the miniseries, right? Rather than sensationalizing and just getting, eyeballs to look at something that is so grotesque that people can't look away. I remember when these events occurred, and it was national news, and it was, so so bizarre and disturbing that it was hard to wrap one's head around it. So what the miniseries did in part, I think it tried to tell from his father's point of view, but also it did bring up the fact that the victims were overlooked and the cries for help were overlooked, in part because of who they were. They were, minorities, homosexuals, marginalized communities. There was the underage victim that he had already assaulted and had not yet killed, and basically the police showed up. He says, no, this was just my boyfriend, and he was drunk, or whatever the story was. And they also brought up again the victims' families having to relive this. So this would not be a book I would seek out at all. I do think, and I even remember at the time, it was kind of sensationalistic, and some of the subsequent, it was like, I think he did, I forget the exact title, but it was like Dahmer versus Jesus, or something like that, which, again, not, I don't think treating the subject with the gravity that is required. So at any rate, there are people who seek this out. There are 24 graded copies. Let's go to something lighter from Adventure Comics. Is Torg #2, based on the bestseller from West End Games. So I guess it's based on a game. There are 23 copies. From Millennium is Anne Rice's The Witching Hour #1. Duncan Eagleson did the story and art, and John Bolton did the cover. This was based on a trilogy of books that Anne Rice did, I think, prior to Interview with the Vampire. And this was the adaptation of the first one. Also, Kamiko is involved with this. But this is, basically an adaptation of Anne Rice's work. And she was pretty prominent, a literary figure, best-selling novels and so forth at the time with all these, vampire stories. And I don't know how DC let her go with the rights to the Witching Hour title, but at any rate, 18 copies. From Kitchen Sink Press is Cadillacs and Dinosaurs in 3D issue #1 by Mark Schultz. It was a fairly popular little title. 18 copies. And from the top book from Cherry Comics is Cherry's Jubilee, issue #1. So I guess Cherry Pop-Tart went over to her own company, started publishing these. We will see another Cherry book on the list, and this also has 18 copies on the Population Report. The top book from Slave Labor is Milk and Cheese #2 by Evan Dorkin. There are 15 copies of this. Our top book from Personality Comics, and there is a tie. One of them is Bo Jackson versus Michael Jordan, issue #1. And John Ward did the cover. Again, sports, Michael Jordan, he seems to be the one that sells. There were a lot of these. I bought them because I was a sports fan, and then I was generally sorely disappointed with them because, to be honest with you, not the best art, and the storytelling is rather surface. There are 14 copies of this. That ties it with Sports Comics #2, also Michael Jordan, D. Dudley Max cover, 14 copies. The top book from New England Comics is Chromatic #1, Brett Edlund, it now in color. So it is a color version of the Tick. There are 14 copies. The top book from Rebel Studios is Faust, Volume 2, #9, by Dave Quinn and Tim Vigil. There is, which was common with the Faust books at this time, there's like an outer cover that kind of covers up some of the naughty bits, but there is some, there's still some naughty bits on the cover. This is meant for adults. 14 copies. The top book from Fantagraphics, and there's another tie here, 8 Ball issue number 9 by Dan Close. This is also for mature readers. He had previously done The Adventures of Lloyd Llewellyn. Then he did 8 Ball. 8 Ball, I'm going to guess, will be on the list next year because there was a very important storyline in there that has more gravitas. There are 13 copies. And that ties it with the Usagi Yojimbo Color Special issue number 3 by Stan Sakai. Again, Usagi Yojimbo has been around since the 80s and is constantly in publication. All of it by Stan Sakai. This also has 13 copies. The top book from North Star Publishing is Leatherface number 4. We talked about this in detail last week's episode with issue number 1 coming out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. And kind of here where Leatherface is breaking the trade dress, sort of like Dark Phoenix and Uncanny X-Men 135. There are 13 copies. And the top book from Sega is Sonic the Hedgehog No Number. This is a supplement. This is actually what they call the Mean Machines edition. This was in the Mean Machines issue number, was that 15 that it says? There are 13 copies. Our next book is from Last Gasp, and it is Cherry number 13. I think this is the final Last Gasp issue. I think is a better way to say it. This is the final issue. 12 copies on the census. We saw that Cherry went over to Cherry Publications. The top book from Ripoff Press is Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers issue number 12. And waited quite a bit for that particular issue. 12 copies. The top book from Diamond is Previews Volume 2, number 3. We occasionally see previews on the list, but the previews, and I don't remember specifically this far back, but maybe it was just thin enough to fit in a case. But usually the previews magazines that you would get from the LCS, like kind of before the information was more readily available on the internet, where you would get like this phone book sized, really thick catalog of all the upcoming titles from all the major publishers, as well as, other things that could be ordered through the comic store, like games and toys and DVDs and so on and so forth. But this has a Spawn cover. That's what puts it on our list. 12 copies. The top book from Atomica Press is A1 issue number 6, which features Tank Girl. That has 11 copies. The top book from Fleetway is Dread by Bisley No Number. Steve Bisley did the art on this one. Fleetway was reprinting and repackaging some of the stories from the British magazines for an American audience. And this has 11 copies as well. From Rock Fantasy Comics is Rock Fantasy Comics number 18, limited edition, featuring Kiss. Kiss is pretty popular. 10 copies. The top book from Fantaco Enterprises is Zombie War number 1, interestingly by Kevin Eastman and Tom Scoulon, with Kevin Eastman and Eric Talbot cover and art. I don't really know much else about that. There are 10 copies. The top book from Continuity Comics is Crazy Man number 1. Is this by Neil Adams? I can't tell. I didn't really get a good picture. This ran for 3 issues, and then subsequently there's a 4-issue series. 7 copies. From EC Comics is Mad Super Special number 82. 7 copies. From Aardvark Vanaheim is Cerebus the Aardvark number 161 by Dave Sim. 6 copies. From Illustration Studios is Betty Page, The 50s Rage, annual number 1. by Steve Warron. Cover and art. 4 copies. From Mad Love Publications is the second printing of From Hell #1 by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell, which of course was adapted to a movie in 2001. 4 copies. From HM Communications is Heavy Metal issue number 141. Simon Bisley did the cover here. This has a total of 4 copies. From DC's Impact line is The Crusaders issue number 1, which teams up all these MLJ/Archie heroes: the Shield, Jaguar, Black Hood, the Fly, the Web, and the Comet. The Crusaders had appeared before under other publishers, including Archie. This ran for 8 issues, and then the rights went somewhere else for a while again. 3 copies. From Comico is Elemental's Sex Special number 2. I think there were 2 volumes of this. 3 copies. From Air Cell Comics is Flesh Gordon number 1. This was based on a 1974 movie, which was an adult movie that originally had an X rating, but eventually got trimmed down a little bit to an R rating. Evidently, there were hardcore elements that, for legal reasons, because the laws restricting such material in 1974 were much stricter, were cut out and maybe confiscated by the police and never seen again. So, whatever. There are... this one has 3 copies on the census. The top book from World of Fandom is Ratfink Comics number 4. 3 copies. We go to Double Diamond, and it's Hepcats number 9, the second printing. 2 copies. From Eros Comics is Jane Bondage in Thunderballs, issue number 1. This, of course, is an erotic James Bond takeoff. There are 2 copies. Top book from Vortex Comics is NASCAR Adventures number 4, starring Davey Allison. It seemed like they did all NASCAR comics. Now, Hot Rod comics were kind of popular in the 60s and the 50s, and maybe NASCAR populars had a little bit of popularity in the early 90s, but not that much. There are 2 copies on the census. And our final book is the top book from Gladstone. They've done the EC reprints, but now they have some, I think these are reprints of old Disney stories. It's Walt Disney's Donald Duck Adventures, issue number 10. 2 copies on the population report. And that's going to do it for 1992. We are in the midst of the early 90s comic boom. Huge popularity amongst these titles. But things are about to change. I think 1993 will still see big numbers from a lot of books, but things might change pretty quickly. I don't know how many. I'm gonna edit this for a second. I'm gonna come back in a second and tell you, I think, how many of these I have. So I think I have 28 of these comic books. I have all the DC ones and all the X-Men related titles, but I don't really collect Amazing Spider-Man, so I don't have those books. So what's your number? How many of these books do you have? Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of these on my want list. Yeah, I don't know. Nothing really that I think I need to have on my want list. So anyway, I'd like to thank you for stopping by. You can check out the playlist that has all of these videos going all the way back to 1934. We will continue as best we can up through 2025. I already have an idea of what we're going to do as far as a weekly series following that, and that'll last forever. In the meantime, you got to check out a couple of my other videos here, and this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.